Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I have a fantastic and very fascinating guest with me today. Her name is Lily Weis. She is a certified alcohol freedom coach, certified naked mind coach, and co-host of the Sober Chick Life podcast, who got her sparkle back after her own struggle with alcohol ended with the epiphany that life is more fun and adventurous when alcohol-free, and getting there doesn't have to be miserable. Lily is known for being a refreshing and joyful voice on overcoming alcohol addiction. Lily, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been super excited about having this time with you.
Oh, I'm excited to have you on the show, and I cannot wait to hear your entire story. Plus, find out what the heck a certified naked mind coach is. My mind, personally, went into a lot of different directions when I read that.
Well, as it turns out, a woman from the Denver area, Annie Grace, wrote the book, This Naked Mind. And that is the certification. I went to the This Naked Mind Institute for my alcohol freedom certification. And the idea being that, well, a naked mind, a mind just like it was born. A birthday suit mind, if you will. I guess there's other ways to say that. But that is where that comes from. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so tell us your story, Lily. How did this all come about? When did you decide that maybe drinking wasn't working out for you so well, when you had this epiphany, and what happened after that? So just tell us your story in your own words. We're just dying to hear it.
Well, to keep you from dying, I will tell. I was what I considered to be just an average social drinker. My life was never in danger from alcohol. I wasn't ill from it. I wasn't going to lose my job. I wasn't going to lose a relationship. We actually call this gray area drinking, which means that when you talk about alcohol use disorder, which is the preferred medical term, alcohol use disorder is a spectrum. And when we think about, and I'm putting this in air quotes for anyone just listening, when we think about an alcoholic, we think about what you're probably imagining is someone in the top 10% of that spectrum. And those are the people that are physically addicted to alcohol, meaning if they stopped drinking right away without medical help, they could possibly die.
Wow.
So that is a very serious thing. So if you are that kind of a drinker, or you start having tremors or become violently ill when you stop drinking, you need medical intervention. The rest of us, the other 90%, believe some things about alcohol that just isn't true, and I'll get to that. So there I was, what you'd call a gray area drinker. And I had always lived this super fun life that was adventurous, and, I liked traveling. I did a lot of athletic things, some kind of crazy things. And I found that as I was getting older, all I was doing for fun was drinking. Like all the joy had just kind of, I don't know, it was like someone popped it and there was a slow leak. All the joy was slowly leaking out of my life. Then instead of traveling or going hiking or backpacking, I found that I was sitting in this chair in my living room drinking a bottle of red wine a night. And it's not something that happened overnight, which is also, a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this. I didn't set out to become that person who sat at home watching Netflix, drinking wine. That's just not how. What happened was, in my mid-40s, I had a little bump in my giddy up, a hitch in my giddy up, if you will. And I thought, and this is so adorable, I had this plan, and I thought it was so great. I have mad personal growth skills. I had trauma when I was a kid. I did 5 years of therapy, and I learned how to deal with emotions and who I was and what I was about. But I hit this bump in the road and I thought, oh, I have an idea. I'll just drink in the evenings and that will relax me and kind of take the edge off. Right. So here we have this highly functioning woman, very fit, very interested in staying healthy, eating amazingly clean, thinking this was a great idea, because you heard about how a glass of red wine was good for you, et cetera, et cetera. That's malarkey, by the way. We could cover that later. But I believed that to be true. And I also believe, like in my past, that I would just be able to stop because I always had before. In college, I drank a lot, but during the semesters, I didn't because I was a computer major. It was really hard. I needed to study. And then in my late 20s, I quit drinking for like 10 years just because I was doing other things. So it didn't occur to me that in a million years, I'm disciplined. I'm a runner. Like I said, I eat well. I have an enthusiasm disorder. So when I get on something, I'm on it, right? Like I'm all over it. When I learn something new, I'm like really learning and excited about it. So I just thought I would drink for this year and then I would just stop. Piece of cake, slice of pie. Oh, I found out it doesn't work like that. And what we know, or what I know now, and what people who study alcohol use disorder know, is when you start using alcohol to solve a problem, you've crossed a line. And what happens is, and we don't realize this is happening to us, we start using alcohol to solve all our problems. It sort of becomes like the duct tape in our life for problems. Because think about it. Girlfriend breaks up with her boyfriend, you bring wine. Oh, engaged, you bring wine. Somebody has a bad day at work, alcohol. Somebody dies, you honor their lives with alcohol. Somebody gets married, alcohol. And now it's even like this mommy wine culture that you have wine now at kids' birthday parties. You have wine at Halloween when you're walking around with your kids. I mean, it is just soaked into the fabric of our life.
Okay, you just reminded me, because the last time we actually did do, had trick-or-treaters, and it was several years ago before the pandemic. And then it was like, hey, this is kind of nice not having kids knocking on the door and having the dogs go crazy. But I remember a couple of moms at the door with their kids, and they had a glass of wine, and I'm like, wow, that's something new. I mean, we never did that when we were kids. Mom never came along with a glass of wine, and it was just really interesting. I thought it was really strange.
It has really gotten into every bit of a mom's life, which is, we can talk about later about why that's not serving them. So this was what my life had become instead of, and I realized it. I mean, I was pretty surprised when I couldn't stop, but I wasn't super worried. I thought, oh, I'm disciplined. I got this. I'll figure it out. What I didn't realize was that our bodies are designed to become addicted to things. And it's dopamine. Dopamine is both the molecule that helped us evolve. It's the molecule that they call it the learning molecule. It is also the molecule that creates addiction. And people don't realize this. We all think that that person in the top 10%, those physically addicted, being what alcoholism, once again, I'm using that in air quotes, is. Those are the people who wake and bake, right? They're the people who wake up and drink, or they're drinking by noon, and they're living on the streets. They've had multiple DUIs, they've lost marriages, jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we think as long as we're not there, we're okay. And there's two problems with that. One is that the alcohol, what alcohol does to our bodies physically, both short-term and long-term, and its connection to diseases like cancer and heart disease, etc. But there's also the belief that you're either destined to be an alcoholic or you're not. And if you're one drink below that line, then you're not an alcoholic and you're okay. But like I said, it's a spectrum.
Right.
And very few people go down, very few people go through that spectrum once you start using it to solve your problems, like stress relief after work, social anxiety, your grief. You can't have fun without it, etc. Once you start
loneliness, I would imagine that would be a big one.
Loneliness, absolutely. Boredom, absolutely. These are some of the problems we use alcohol to solve. Once you start doing that, you've put yourself on the spectrum and now you're headed down. And so it's and I want to stop and explain a little bit about dopamine, because
sure, absolutely.
It is so it's how we evolved. Like I said, it was critical for us to survive as humans. But it's also the thing that's gonna take us down. It is the thing that is linked to addiction. They used to believe that dopamine was the sort of happiness molecule. But if you stop and think about it, when people are addicted to something, they're not enjoying it. People living on the streets with alcohol use disorder, they're not having fun. I know I was waking up every morning at 3, so full of shame. I'd said I was going to stop and I didn't. And so I would wake up and I'd think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop this? This is ridiculous. And then I'd wake up at 9 or 7 or 8 in the morning and I'd, okay, today I'm going to stop. That's it. I'm done. And then for some reason at 5 after my dog walk, I'd have that wine in my hand again. That is dopamine. So what's happening in our bodies is that anything that hits our reward center of the brain, like a nuclear bomb, it creates, and that is alcohol, gambling, social media, video games, pornography, all these things, sugar, they hit our reward center at an unnatural level. And so the dopamine fires off and there's this woohoo, and there is 20 minutes to 30 minutes of, oh my gosh, this is the best time ever. That's that buzz you get after your first drink. Here's a little thought experiment. Notice you never get that buzz back. It only comes at the first drink. And a lot of people out there are saying, Lily, try it. You don't have to believe me. Give it a try. So you get that big hit of dopamine, but our brain doesn't like to be out of balance. So our brain goes from woohoo to, uh-oh, this isn't good. This is too much dopamine. So it starts pumping in the calming down hormones that don't feel good. Your dynorphin, your cortisol, adrenaline. And these are the things that are going to bring you down because you went too high and now you got to come down. So you have just borrowed joy from a loan shark because you're going to get that 20 minutes of the big woohoo. But guess what? It's 2 to 3 hours of uh-oh.
Wow.
So that is not a great trade. So now what's going to happen is that first drink is going to order the second drink. And this is all happening in your subconscious without you realizing it's going on. So you're no longer in that happy state. You're coming down, down, down. Now you're below where you even started. And your subconscious says, oh, I got an idea. Have another drink of that woohoo. But you can never catch up. And so you end up, let's say you came home stressed from work and you were like a level 5 stress and you got your first dopamine hit and that brought you up to an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by the time you've had that first drink, now you're down to a 4.
Mm.
But you don't notice because it's not directly, right? There's the woohoo first and then down, and it keeps going further and further down. And the problem with it is that it not only brings you down directly right after the drinking, but the cortisol in your body is raised for the rest of the week. And this is even after 1 glass of wine.
Wow.
So you're moving backwards, and it's predatory, right?
I love that word.
It's grooming you.
Mm-hmm.
It's treating you like a princess. Like, oh, baby, I'm gonna make you feel so good. And then it smacks you down with the promise of, oh, but I'll make you feel good again.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Stockholm syndrome. Yes, it is. And you start believing the alcohol is the only thing that's going to make you feel better.
Okay, so I have another question. This is related to the dopamine and the dopamine hits. And that is even like, for example, does this work the same way for chocolate? I mean, there's times when I have got to have that. It's very small, but I need to have that piece of dark chocolate.
Anything that gives you an unnatural hit to your reward center. So a piece of dark chocolate is going to be different than like straight sugar.
Right.
So it would really depend upon how much sugar is in your dark chocolate. But yes, it's absolutely dopamine that's bringing you back to, you have somehow connected the dark chocolate to resolving a feeling. So I don't know if that's stress or if that's celebratory. I don't know what that is for you, but yes, you're using the dark chocolate as a tool. And I know for myself, when I'm going to eat something that I really don't want to be eating, and once again, remember, dopamine is not the pleasure molecule, it's the more molecule. I stop and ask myself, what do I really need? Because I was using alcohol to cover up what I really needed. And it didn't work, and it escalated. So it took me about 5 years of being on this god-awful hamster wheel that I described, because that's what we believed for a long time was the way to change a habit. It's like Steve Martin's got this great joke: how to make $1 million and not pay taxes. Step 1, get $1 million. I just absolutely love that. So when it comes to habit change, like for not drinking, people are all in for just using willpower. How do you stop drinking? Well, stop. And then when it doesn't work, because willpower is a muscle, and it will fail. Some people have more than others, and if you've worked it, it's going to last longer than others, but it will fail. That's why when you do a program that is willpower based, you have to go to meetings every day, because you got to recharge your willpower every day. So I was in that loop, just feeling so much shame. And I would wake up in the morning, as I said, and I would, okay, today I got it. And I did. The solution there, and this is something that has been studied very much more in the last 20 years. I think Dr. BJ Fogg out of Stanford has one of the best books on it, called Tiny Habits. The secret to lasting change is positive emotion. So in fact, the shame that I was experiencing and heaping on myself, because I thought that would keep me from doing it again. You know, I grew up Catholic in the Midwest. This is how parenting worked. If you wanted a kid to stop doing something, you shamed them. Well, I got news for that generation. That does not work. You have to take accountability, but the shame is not taking accountability. Taking accountability is doing something. So the next piece in lasting change is knowledge. And I happened to bumble across Annie Grace's work with This Naked Mind, and she had done the work to figure out just everything that I just told you about what alcohol really is doing in your body. And once I understood that, I'm like, whoa, not my fault. Absolutely my responsibility. So my body was doing what it's designed to do. I needed to learn more. And then instead of doing the willpower shame over and over again, what I needed to do was make a try at going alcohol free. And if I had a drink, not go back to day one, but we call it a data point. What did I learn? So if I'm trying to stop drinking, and let's say I was drinking every day, so my score for a week would be, if you're going to score, would be 7 out of 7 days drinking. Big failure. So what happens if I have 2 alcohol-free days and 5 days that I drink? Well, what I would say is that is a 40% improvement. And I would also say that I have 2 alcohol-free days and I have 5 lessons, 5 opportunities to figure out what my beliefs are about alcohol, why I think it's going to solve my problems, and then figure out what really will solve my problems. And once I had done that work, I was able to walk away, no problem. Because
wow,
I don't want to drink anymore. I just don't want to. I know what it does to my body. I know what it does to my mind. And I know it's not actually more fun than not drinking. Oh, and here's something before you go, and then I'll give you 1 second to speak.
It's okay. People don't tune in to listen to me speak. They tune into listening to the guests, believe me.
You cannot selectively numb. And this is so important, because remember when I talked about you're borrowing joy from a loan shark? When alcohol enters our body, it is both water and fat soluble. So that means it is getting everywhere. It goes through the blood barrier. It goes through the fat. It gets into all of you, from the tip of your head to the tip of your toes. And it's numbing everything. And think back, in earlier times, we used alcohol. If we had to saw someone's leg off, we got them drunk first, right? Before we had anesthesia. It numbs. Or if you needed a tooth pulled, you'd have a few drinks first. But you're not selectively numbing. You're not just numbing the pain. You are numbing your joy. And what happens is, if you remember back to when I was first talking about the balance of our brains, I gave you the short-term balance. Well, the long-term balance is, if you're using alcohol to create your joy, your body will stop creating the hormones that naturally produce pleasure and joy in your body. So you lose the ability to naturally have fun. And this is why sunsets are no longer astonishing to you. And this is no longer why you sit in awe of a child or your dog or whatever used to bring you awe in your life. That's gone. That's why you start saying, let's get a bottle of wine and go to a kid's birthday party.
Oh, okay. So the first thing I wanted to say was, well, there's a couple of things, but the first thing, when you were saying that once you understood your body and understand what was happening, that then, was easier to take that path and make those choices. And the only thing I was just going to say was, knowledge is power.
Oh, yeah.
And, and of course, this show is all about empowerment. And the more you know about your body and how it works and how certain things affect you that you don't even think might be impacting you in any way, then you have that kind of power to make a choice because it's an informed choice. It's not like I'm beating myself up. I'm a horrible person. I'm so ashamed of myself. And now look at me, I did it again. And so that I think would make it easier to break free of that cycle of shame and self-loathing.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up power, because the process of becoming alcohol free is taking your power back from alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
We have given over our power to alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is take that back.
Well,
And
I think that we have been encouraged to do that. Even we were talking a little bit before the recording of how it seems that alcohol, wine in particular, is just glorified, by our society, by the media, by the advertising, especially for women. There's even a lovely group. I don't know if I should say it, but I will. It was a group, a networking group, and I don't think it exists anymore, but it was actually called Women, Wine, and Wellness. And, at first it was like, well, that's really cute, but there's a whole lot of oxymoron going on here.
that kind of thing just.
And it was, and then there was something else. There was Buds, Beers, and Brews or something like that. I can't remember. There was the counterpart for the men that included beer. But and I went to one of their to the Women, Wine, and Wellness. I was invited to be there as a speaker. And yeah, there was a lot of wine there. And they kept saying, would you like a glass? And it's like, no, I have to speak and I have to drive and I have to sleep tonight.
Oh, yeah. And I love that you brought up sleep, because as we become a certain age and sleep becomes dear. Oh my gosh, the hot flashes. My hot flashes almost entirely stopped when I stopped drinking, by the way, which was good. So here's something that alcohol does to our sleep. And you hear people saying things like alcohol messes up your sleep, but they don't tell you why. And so you think, oh yeah, it's just one of those things, right? You don't really understand it, so you don't empower yourself. So here's an empowerment to get your sleep back. The last 2 REM cycles of our sleep has, I don't know, 5, 6 to 8 cycles. And within it, we have these REM cycles. And the last 2 are the longest REM cycles. And in those 2 cycles are when we solidify what we learned the day before. And we process the previous day's emotions. So the thing that alcohol does is that, because remember I talked about all those not feel good chemicals that happen after have your woohoo, the uh-oh chemicals.
Right.
One of them's adrenaline. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, when all of the other chemicals that make you drowsy have gone away, now you've got adrenaline. You wake up at 3 and you start missing those last 2 REM cycles. So it's disrupted your sleep. You've added all of these stressors to your system. The cortisol is going to last for a week. And to add to the kick in the behind here, you have not processed the previous day's emotions. So guess what? Now you're more stressed. Plus you're foggy because you're not remembering things as well. So I know I had a period of time when I was having the hot flashes at first. Oh my gosh, I could not finish a sentence. My husband was getting so frustrated, and he was going to get dead if he kept it up. I was just at it with him.
I know.
Yes, I know I'm not finishing.
Yes. Well, and I know that same thing. And actually I have the skills to do it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So you can tell. So my husband would then start tiptoeing around me.
I think that was wise. Mine learned quickly that you do not finish my sentences and you do not get impatient. But one of the reasons that's happening is some of it is the perimenopause, menopause, but some of it is your drinking has probably escalated. I also want to touch on, when you touch on wellness, I want to touch on what alcohol is doing to our bodies long term, because there's a big myth, and I'm going to call it a fat lie, because it's the same lie that was told to us about cigarettes.
I was just thinking about that. I kept going back to smoking. I am a former respiratory therapist. And, I remember how when I was little, how everybody smoked, and it was good for us, and try these menthol cigarettes. They're even better for you. And oh my goodness, I can't believe, of course, that, anybody would promote cigarettes, but of course, there are a lot of people making money off of it. So why wouldn't they?
Right. And doctors were smoking in their office.
Oh, they were smoking in the hospital. I remember as a new respiratory therapist, brand new respiratory therapist, my first job, that there was a surgeon who would walk around the hospital doing rounds with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
And I think that alcohol will be seen in the same way that smoking is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good news about alcohol is, unless you're driving or fall on me, you're not going to kill me with your drinking. Mm-hmm. Whereas secondhand smoke was killing the rest of us. Mm-hmm. Alcohol is as dangerous as cigarettes for our body. In fact, if you are someone who's having 7 drinks a week, whether or not you're doing that over the weekend, or if you're having just 1 glass of wine a night, or one of whatever your poison is, and this is a 5-ounce pour of wine. People, this
isn't a huge,
this is not this amount of wine. It's this amount of wine. I'm holding up a glass for anyone who's listening. That is the equivalent of smoking. I think on the Huberman Lab podcast on alcohol, he's out of Stanford. He's got a great special podcast on alcohol in the body. I can't recommend it higher enough. Mm-hmm. It is the equivalent of 7 to 14 cigarettes is what they're figuring out. And in fact, one of the components that alcohol breaks into in our bodies is also in cigarettes.
Wow.
It's like acetaldehyde or something like that. I can't pronounce it. I should be able to, but it's escaping me. So not only is it causing us short-term harm, it comes into our guts, and it's actually causing leaky gut while you're drinking it, because it's creating holes in your gut, and then all the ick that shouldn't be getting into your bloodstream is going into your bloodstream. It is toxic to the point that your body shuts down everything else and does nothing but works on getting the alcohol out. And so, heads up, athletes, there was a study done in Australia where they took amateur soccer players and they did a muscle biopsy before they worked out. And then they worked them out. All of them had the same workout. And then they gave some of them alcohol and some of them didn't have alcohol. And the people who did not have alcohol, their muscles were recovering 37% faster.
Wow.
So when you're someone who goes and works out, and you think, like, after marathons, I don't know, you do, if you've ever a runner or do races, like after the marathon, they give you a beer. Well, guess what? Your body's not going to start recovering. It's going to start getting rid of, purging the alcohol.
Right.
So I had a client who talked about she was drinking when she had a cold because she thought that alcohol worked in her body the same way that like alcohol wipes work on a surface. She thought it would kill the germs.
Oh dear.
And I said, no, what that's actually doing is your body is no longer fighting the virus. It's the virus is going mental in your body. It's just trying to chuck out the alcohol. And I talked about how it gets into the brain. It's linked to early dementia. It is long-term very linked to breast cancer, colon cancer, esophageal cancer. The American Heart Federation says 0 amount of alcohol is safe for your heart. So this business where a glass of red wine is good for you, kind of bullshit.
Whoever came up with that, I don't remember, because it's been years where it was like, if you're going to drink red wine. And so who did that? Was it the wine manufacturers or the wine industry?
I think it is, and it's because of the reversatile. Is that the stuff in
Yes,
there?
yes.
That if you drank enough wine to get a benefit from that, you would actually kill yourself, because we all know if you drink too much in one sitting, you can die.
Yeah.
Your body relaxes to the point that you stop breathing, or you vomit and you aspirate out the vomit. So yeah, no. and I've already talked about how it's not really reducing your stress, it's increasing your stress. And I'm not here to judge. If I was a glass house, you wouldn't even have to hit me with the stone, just a ricochet. You could just blow at me and I would explode, right? You know, I did plenty of drinking, and I am not judging. But I do want you to have the facts so that you can make a decision. Just own your decision.
You know, I have another question. I want to go back to the leaky gut, because it seems like over the past several years, there has been an explosion in different, you know, digestive type of issues with leaky gut, Crohn's, IBS, all kind. And I would hear it all the time, this leaky gut, and, you know, all of these people with these incredible digestive issues. And I always thought, gosh, this is another pandemic thing coming up. But it's like, do you think that there is a correlation between, you know, what we're seeing from, you know, the general public with digestive issues and the leaky gut syndrome that is related to alcohol consumption? And maybe because the alcohol is so, yeah, almost like I said before, glorified in our society. You can't have a party without it.
Right? Actually, you can go to a party without it and have more fun. But I'll answer your question first. I don't have the science in front of me, so I would hesitate to say. I don't like to say something unless I can, you know, pull up the study that proves my statement. But I will say that drinking for women has increased dramatically. So if we are seeing an increase in these stomach things or gut issues, and we know that alcohol creates leaks in our gut, it makes sense that that would certainly be worth looking into.
Interesting. Okay, so there was something else I wanted to ask, and now I kind of lost my train of thought. I mean, my mind is going in a lot of different directions. But this is something really not that related to what we're talking about now, but what you mentioned quite a while back at the beginning of the recording is that you've done some crazy things. And I'd like to hear about some of the crazy things that you've done.
Oh, I've had some fun. Yeah, that's some fun. My father, throughout my life, always said to me, "You can't do that." And then as he got older and older, he's gone now, he would say, "How did you do that?" So I have a real passion for travel and adventure. So I was a computer nerd in the 80s and 90s, and easy jobs to come by. I'd work for 3 years and then take 6 months a year off and travel. So I rode my bike across North America. That was super fun, from the Pacific to the Atlantic Oceans.
Wow.
I did 6 months in Southeast Asia on a solo trekking trip. I went to the Himalayas to go trekking, and ended up breaking my foot in Kathmandu after my first trek. So I did Southeast Asia on crutches solo with the backpack. Had a blast.
And you were by yourself?
Yes, my choice was to go home in Chicago in the middle of winter on crutches, or go to Thailand and Vietnam. So I went to Thailand and Vietnam. And when I was 30, I quit my job and became a raft guide and a whitewater canoe instructor for a few years. Had a home design and build business, and now I'm a life coach. I mean, just taking life as it comes. I mentioned briefly that I had trauma when I was a child, and I made the decision that if I was going to live, I was going to live, and it was going to be big, and it was going to be on my terms. And so when my life got so sad and small from the alcohol, really bothered me because I believed that without alcohol, I wouldn't have fun. But here's the thing, I wasn't having fun. So many people find themselves in this conundrum, this cognitive dissonance, if you will. What I learned was that over a period of time, I had numbed my joy. And when I got my joy back, all of the fun came back. I don't any longer say, let's go get a bottle of wine and watch the sunset on the beach. I just say, let's go watch the sunset on the beach. I don't need the wine to make it special.
So another question, does your husband drink, or did he drink?
He drank, never as much as me. He occasionally will have a drink. Yeah, it was something to keep up with. He was never a really big drinker. He maybe has a drink every once in a while, maybe once a month. And I could care less. I mean, I care from a perspective of I want him to be healthy.
Right.
But it's a judgment-free thing, and I don't feel like I'm missing out. In fact, I worry for him when he drinks because I know what it's doing to him. I know it's adding to his stress level. I know it's adding to his disease load. And I know that it really isn't that great. It's just not what it is advertised.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of false advertising out there, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Somebody always has, like, ulterior motive, let's just say, and most of it is making money off of you. They really don't care about you.
Oh yeah, and I love it that in Canada, where I live now, BC, when you go to the province liquor store, they always have these drink responsibly signs up. Nothing chaps my hide more than a drink responsibly sign. Also do heroin responsibly, because there is no way you can take a highly addictive substance that our bodies are designed to become addicted to and do that responsibly over time. And that's where I talked about the grooming comes in, because it doesn't happen right away. It happens slowly over time, and you don't realize it.
Well, like you said it was a predator.
Yes.
And predators are very insidious. And they choose their victims very carefully. So take home point is, don't be the victim.
Don't be the victim. And if you are on the alcohol use disorder spectrum, no big deal. Your life's not over. You don't have to be miserable. There is joy on the other side, and it doesn't have to be the hardest thing you've ever done. There is a period of discomfort when you start to stop, so to speak, when you start choosing an alcohol-free, powerful life, when your body needs to detoxify from the poisons. So if you're a daily or weekly drinker and you stop drinking, there's going to be a period of time where you don't feel that great. You can get headachy, you can get a little nauseated, be really crabby. I know when I stopped sugar, and the same thing happened with alcohol, my husband would walk in the front door and I would just look at him, wondering what he has done to make me so mad, because I was quite sure it was him. And it was just, my body wasn't making the feel-good chemicals on its own yet, and I wasn't drinking them or eating them. So it must have been his fault.
Oh, of course. It's always his fault.
Totally. Yeah.
And the other thing I have got to just mention, because I thought this was adorable when you said it, and I, wrote it down and even circled it, is your enthusiasm disorder. That's a really, really attractive disorder to have.
I do have an enthusiasm disorder. Well, sometimes my husband tells me to get in my basket. Lily, get in your basket. Get in my basket. I get so excited about things, and I do love it. I love my enthusiasm disorder. It's the thing that has carried me into some good trouble in my lifetime. Yeah. And now I am so enthusiastic about really sharing my experience so that people can understand that they can become alcohol free and they can love their life and they can love parties and they can love holidays, and they will, the energy level you wake up with is unbelievable.
I love it. I think that's awesome. So, okay, how do people get a hold of you? Where can they find you, Lily?
Super easy. I'm at coachingwithlily.com. Or you can shoot me an email at lily@coachingwithlily.com. And you can also hear me with my awesome coach, co-host Zoe on Sober Chick Life.
Excellent. Now, what made you decide to do the podcast, and how did you connect with, is it Zoe?
Zoe, yeah. Zoe is so much fun. She also has an enthusiasm disorder, I think. She is also a certified This Naked Mind coach. And I met her, we were coaching together in a group, and I just loved her. And I thought, why not do a podcast? And it really was as fast as that, is I want to share this message. I want people to know that life can be so fun. In fact, for my life, it has been so much more fun alcohol free. And a great way to do that is via a podcast. And honestly, we talked about it on one day, and 2 weeks later, our first episode was up.
Wow.
Because we're just going with it. I don't know. It's more important to get the word out there than it is to be perfect.
Well, I would imagine that it would be incredibly liberating. Just to even be able to, walk past a glass of wine and just like, there's no way, or, drive by a liquor store going, I don't even want to think about going in there. It's just that you're not, it's a vice that you really don't need, but I guess most vices you don't.
Well, I'm hanging on to coffee and swearing so that people still like me. My concern is if you're a goody two shoes, no one will like you. So I've decided those are my two. I honestly sometimes say I was having a particularly tough time at an airport, and I said to myself, this is why people think they want to drink.
I like that statement. You think you want to drink.
And when you think it through, you recognize, actually, that's not going to help. But oh my gosh, would it be awesome if there was this magical elixir that you could drink anytime you wanted? And
called water?
Good point. But yes, that as alcohol is advertised, it's a magic elixir that will solve all of your problems. Almost like a god, right?
Right. Worshiping at the foot of the grape.
Yes, absolutely.
Or the hops or whatever it is that you're consuming.
Right. And that's a little scary.
Well, I just have to close to one story because it is kind of funny. There's a small group of women that I know. We actually take dance classes together, and one of them is young, quite young. She's in her 30s, and talking about how, oh yes, she's a mental health, counselor or whatever, and how much like alcohol abuse there is, especially in older women. She says like they're 60s, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not necessarily an older woman. But anyway, so we're talking about it and having this conversation, and there was another woman in the conversation who's even older than me, and we were all talking about how much we enjoyed each other's company and blah blah blah. And the same person, the mental health counselor, says, I should have you both over for wine some night. And I thought, wait a minute.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Again, that cognizant, dissonance, or the, oxymoron. It was just really funny. And I said, didn't we just have a conversation about that?
Not even, and that it's, a mental health professional.
But it's so funny. That's how insidious it is, and how it has been so ingrained into our society that this is what you do when you get together.
Yes. Yes. And I have a group of girlfriends where I live. I'm new to the area. And when I first moved here, we were all drinking buddies. And then the pandemic happened and nobody did anything together. And is amazing is all of us have become alcohol free over the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah. And now we still get together, but nobody's drinking anymore. It's just crazy. We all realized we were on the spectrum and we all quit.
Because I think that the pandemic created a lot of spectrum heading in the other direction.
Yes. Yes. That liquor stores, and at the time I was drinking too, and I was panicked that they were going to close. That's a real clue.
Okay, Lily, you have been an absolute delight. I absolutely love your enthusiasm disorder. I love well, just about, you know, the joy and your energy and everything. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this information. It is so incredibly valuable. I am a medical person and I didn't know a lot of these details myself. So I think that's maybe one of the big, deep, dark secrets is keep them, you know, uneducated. So thanks for sharing all of this information.
Oh, it has been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And everybody do, thank you so much for listening. Do share this episode with everybody you know, whether they drink or don't, because there is so much valuable information. And once we understand what is happening physiologically when we take that drink, it seems a little bit less palatable now. Yeah, I'm going to just start going for the coffee next time. So.
Well, I'm glad it worked for you.
And everybody do check out Lily's her website. And I do believe that you offer a consultation, I think.
I do. So I love talking to people. I call it a strategy session. So if you feel like you're on the alcohol use disorder spectrum, or you're just even sober curious.
Oh, sober curious.
Set up an appointment, and I do coach people one-on-one, and I offer small group programs. If I'm not the right fit for you, I will not leave you high and dry. I will help you, if you're interested, find the program that works for you. And it's not one of these things, like I said, where you're going to have to be miserable and go to meetings for the rest of your life and all the joy is leaked out of your life. What you're headed for is so much joy. And when you're done, you're done. It's not something that lasts for the rest of your life, because when you no longer want to drink, guess what? It's not hard to not drink. I also don't want to poke a hot stick in my eye. I don't have a problem with that either.
It loses its appeal pretty quickly.
It loses its appeal.
And Lily, I love the double entendre, high and dry.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. You're awesome. I just absolutely love having you on the show.
Thank you.
And again, everybody do check out Lily's website and check out her podcast. It is the Sober Chick Life podcast. All of these links are definitely in the show notes. You can find them anytime. But yeah, maybe we all ought to just stop drinking and start living. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.